We can see
Your
and
mom
hear
has
you.
kept us
So
updated.
Good.
So now, do you see my iPad right there?
Yep.
How do I get you on that? Am I supposed to hit the X on up here?
Don't
I've
hit
never
the
done
X.
Zoom, so I'm lost.
Yeah, don't hit the X. That'll shut you off.
Pardon me?
Don't hit the X.
Okay,
there's a
we'll just leave
square
it
there-
like it is on my cell phone till I get smarter.
That works. If you wanted to see
Yeah.
anyone else on your cell phone, you can just swipe left or right on your phone. You should be able to see other people.
Well, they're gonna be awful small pictures of you guys, but that's all right.
It'll be pretty tiny. We can see and hear you though. All
Yeah,
right.
I'll leave it like it is. It's not broken, so I'll leave it like it is because I'm liable to break it. I'm old school. I should have been Amish.
There you go. Tom, you're go ahead. You're free to start.
okay, yeah, Bob, we know each other obviously going way back, and but
Yeah,
on the screen is Matthew Larson and Matthew Timmerman, and who I don't know, and I'd like to find out more about them, and so I've asked them to introduce themselves, and I think Matt Larson, you were just about to start.
Yeah. So my name is Matthew Larson. I was born in Jamestown. Spent most of my life here and traveled out to Colorado and spent some time down in Tennessee as well. Just really getting into the out of doors down there and checking out, just different parts of the country available to me. And spent my summers as a boy in Montana with my grandparents there, just, getting outside every opportunity that we had. And so, I contacted Eddie and I wanted to get to know a little bit more about the city's deer management program that we want to put in place. I think it's a really good opportunity. So that's what I'm doing here.
Okay, well, great. It sounds like you've got a lot of experience and certainly well-traveled. So
A little bit, yeah.
help us.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, Matt Timmerman. Maybe you could tell us about, I guess, your background and.
Yeah, I'm Matt Timmerman. I've been in Jamestown since 18 years old. I'm 60 now, so it's put me here quite a while. I was a police officer for the town of Ellicott for 15 years, transferred to Syracuse for 7 years. Retired from there. I was a detective and a sergeant, and came back to Jamestown and took a management position at FedEx. And that's where I've been for the last 11 years. Been hunting since I was 14 years old. I remember Bob from when he taught my archery class probably 35 years ago.
wow.
Avid hunter.
Okay. Well, yeah, I appreciate everyone that's here tonight. And I mean, the purpose for me is for us to come up with a deer management plan that is, I guess, agreeable to our city council. I thought we came up with a pretty good plan back in November. Eddie, I don't recall, did it even come to a vote? I don't believe we
Did not.
I don't think
No.
so, if I remember. No.
Yeah. And there are some legitimate safety concerns in something like this, and I understand. I'm kind of in the middle of, I understand the safety concerns, but as the Ward 6 councilman in Jamestown, the number one complaint I get the most of are deer, destroying people's, not just a few bushes, but, trees and berry bushes and thousands of dollars worth of things, that they're destroying. And then the expense of building fences and, so, and I think there's other, concerns too. Earlier, we were mentioning things like Lyme's disease, something that hasn't been an issue in this area that I know of, but I know in other parts of the state it has. One of the things that came up before too was that the car deer accidents that is, and one of the points was that, well, we don't have many of those. And I thought, well, I think a lot of those are going unreported. Because I'm one of them. I hit a deer and it did a little damage to my headlight and an old truck, and I got it fixed, and I never turned it into my insurance. That was long before I got on the city council. I think sometimes that's part of it too, but there aren't many serious car accidents involving deer in the city, or at least that are reported. But so what we're looking for is a plan that a council can approve, and Brent is he's the Ward 1 councilman, who also is the chairman of the safety committee. So I'm public works, he's safety, and we're trying to, and I think the council would be open to something, as long as I felt it was safe.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, and really I'm looking towards all of you, and especially Matt, who were not involved in this before. Maybe there's something we can learn from you that will, make this a safer program or a plan.
Yeah. Do you mind if I go?
Go, yeah, please.
So I think that one of the major things that I see is just the education of people on how safe bow hunting especially is. I think when you look back and historically, there were upwards of 160 incidents a year involving, deer hunting related accidents. Now this year it was, I think, less than 25. And when you look at those incidents, I mean, most of them they're not involving a firearm and an injury. It's involving somebody falling out of their tree stand, or falling on an arrow, God forbid, something like that. It's so I think that if you educate people on how safe it actually is, I think that you start to change your mind a little bit. And I understand the concerns of shooting somebody's dog, or taking a shot at something. It happens to be a person, but I think in that in that education, I think you're going to find that the other hunters can speak for it too. It's kind of a rigorous course to get your hunter safety permit, and you have to sit there through the course, and you have to pass the test, I think, with 85% or greater. So I think that when you educate people on how educated hunters actually are, and that safety is our main concern, I think that you can build those relationships with people who maybe didn't grow up with a hunting background.
And I think that's what we're dealing with in the city. I'm a teacher at a rural district,
Yeah.
Bruceburg, and hunting's a way of life down here. It's tradition. It's
Yeah.
and it's so. I mean, so they're way more open to something like this. Where,
Yeah. And I don't think. Okay, so I've been in Nashville for a little while, and the law down there is that you have to have written permission from a private landowner, and you can hunt that piece of property. We have an app called Onyx, and it shows you all the property lines of everybody that owns it, and you stick within that boundary, and you can kill a deer with your bow, no problem. And when they started implementing that, there wasn't a spike or an increase in hunting related accidents or incidents. So I think if you look at cities like Nashville, Tennessee, or Atlanta, Georgia, where they allow this kind of thing, I think that it would be foolish to only allow, maybe 20 or 25 archers to go into the parks and try to thin out the herd. I think that if you just allow everybody to get that written private permission, to where the responsibility falls on the hunter and the hunter alone if there is an incident to occur, I think those are the ways to approach this. I don't think that I think that people will feel a lot more comfortable with a plan like that, rather than let's send everybody out and hopefully it goes well.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think, and that was part of the plan, that there would only be, certain, and I don't know if we ever came up with an exact number of hunters, but it probably was less than 20.
Yeah.
Tom, can I jump in?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Bob, for those that can or can't see me. I'm a master instructor for the state of New York in bow hunter education and hunter safety. And I think the number that we'd come up with, Tom, and we discussed in that teleconference call, was like 12. Dan Stone had like 6, I had 6 guys. And in response to the gentleman that just spoke, we really aren't situated in this city to go and get written permission from somebody to hunt on their 50-foot by 100-foot lot. That's kind of not really feasible.
Sure.
I think that's why the mayor and the state had looked at it from the standpoint of city-owned property, the parks, where
Mhm.
there's much more room, and get it started as a launching pad to something that can grow. To areas like where I'm sitting here with enough real estate around me right on Ohio Street, and enough people around who give me permission for the rules and regulations, because we do have to honor the state laws that pertains to bow hunters hunting in the state, and that's that you cannot discharge a compound or a recurve bow within 150 feet of an occupied dwelling. You can't discharge a crossbow within 250 feet of an occupied dwelling. So to try to say, yeah, we're going to hunt on different pieces of 50 by 100-foot property, you're already in violation of the state regulations, because you've got to go branching out to several other homes. And I think that's a discussion with a group of people on different streets that we might not want to get into about hunting. And can I retrieve the deer that I just harvested that fell dead on your property? Do I have permission to go on your property and get it? So there's a lot of things to think about. So I'm kind of leaning towards what the original discussion was, and that is city-owned property to begin with,
Mhm.
specifically the parks.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I have to step away for 1 second and grab a charger. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Mhm.
That's what I had thought of, Tom. It's back
Right.
to you.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we are talking about city-owned property. You know, just for, I don't know, your information, I did a little research into a program they had in Ithaca at Cornell, where they, shot these deer with tranquilizers and then basically operated on them to, remove their ovaries so they couldn't be impregnated, and then, release them back into the wild. It cost $1,200 per deer.
For deer. Yeah.
And then they found out that it didn't reduce the deer population, because these females continued to try to become pregnant, and it just attracted more and more of the bucks. And so the deer population stayed the same. So all of the Ivy Leaguers at Cornell spent a lot of money, and it didn't reduce the deer population. So I don't think that's an option. I don't know of another option out there other than to do some type of a controlled hunt.
Yeah, I thought the DEC was still doing studies on sterilization of deer.
Mhm.
I'm
Well-
looking at what's called deer management in urban areas in New York State DEC
Well,
document. And they also talk about immunocontraception as well.
now, Brent, I'm sorry, I can't hear you real well, but I know you were talking about the DEC studying deer sterilization,
Right.
and have they, is there, I'm sure there is a cost to this, and that's where it gets kind of scary right now with.
Right. Absolutely. There's a cost to it. But they also are doing studies. The DEC is doing studies. So, my thought is I'd like to have somebody from the DEC come back to the city, or at least come to a Zoom meeting to talk to us about some of these
Okay.
programs that they're doing. I
Well,
think you were on
we
council
can
when they
do-
were here the last time, right? It was just about, 3 or 4 years ago.
Right,
We had a meeting at City Hall and they talked about some of the programs.
yeah,
They really didn't talk much about archery in the city at that point, from my memory. They allowed us to issue more permits to the outlying areas in the town of Ellicott
right.
around the city of Jamestown.
Well, that was kind of the compromise. That's kind of what came out of that. I think the council was even less open to doing it back then. And, and I mean, I think all of you should know, I'm not a hunter. I may be the only person in Frewsburg that doesn't hunt. You know, I've lived in Jamestown pretty much for the last 30 years, but so I'm open to other ideas. I just don't know if there are any, you know. The sterilization program that they did at Cornell certainly is not in the budget, in my opinion. If there are other programs out there that we could do, I'm not opposed to them.
Could I jump in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, the master instructors, until the virus hit, master instructors in the state gathered once a year just as masters by region. So for Region 9, we were out in Chaffee, New York. And the state threw out an idea, which we immediately squashed. And that was to use helicopters to drop food pellets laced with a sterilizing agent to sterilize the deer in urban areas to control the number of deer. Well, the one thing that they forgot about was your dogs and cats and everything else that are wandering around. They're going to pick up and eat the same things. So you really want to start sterilizing every animal that picks one up. So there again, Tom, you run into something the state has looked at, but it's not really viable.
Right.
You have to be practical in this whole thing. And what I've read and everything I've heard, and Mayor, you're listening, you talk to the DEC, correct me if I'm wrong. Pretty much archery is the #1 safest and most productive way of doing it. I could put you guys, if you wanted to, you'd have to pay for it. CJ Winan, for anybody that's a hunter might recognize the name. CJ is a wildlife biologist with the Army Corps of Engineers in Maryland. He's a featured hunter on the TV program, Bow Hunter Hunting, and he's a writer for Bow Hunter Magazine, and he helps communities develop urban deer control programs. And the best that he's been able to find to work with is archery. So a lot of the facts that I have, I've gotten directly from CJ. I worked with CJ on the board of directors when I was vice president of Chappie's Outdoors, a ministry that took our nation's wounded, injured, and ill veterans on Christ-centered hunting and fishing and camping outings. So I've known CJ for quite a few years and know him quite well. But that's his thoughts. And the state's mistake on thinking they can sterilize the deer by dropping food pellets.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm going to check in now if it's okay. Bob, do you think that there's ever a chance that we could get those laws changed to be able to hunt a small plot like that?
Well, what you'd have to do is you'd have to work with the DEC and the state legislature and the Senate.
Okay.
To get that done. And for the first time, we're finally going to see this year, there's a good possibility that crossbow will be taken out of the government's hands on the state level, put in the hands of the DEC, and open crossbow to the entire archery season instead of just the last 2 weeks. And why did this suddenly change? Because the governor found out that you can make money selling hunting licenses, so he's made it a part of his budget.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance then that the crossbow will be introduced for October 1st as opposed to the last 2 weeks, which basically is after Halloween, end of November, end of October. Mm-hmm. But to try to get to hunt on that closer proximity, well, that's going to be a huge challenge to say, for every 50 foot by 100 foot piece of property, we're going to get permission to go hunt. Wow. I know
I've seen it done
over in Hess Street that would say, absolutely not. I don't want you anywhere near my property.
Right.
And I don't think we want to start knocking on doors and open up that can of worms to have a citywide debate on, can I have permission to retrieve a deer off your property? I talked to, no, I can't think of his name, conservation officer. Anyway, we spoke last year on this topic, and he said the best thing there would be harvest the animal in a state park or city park. If it happens to expire on somebody's private property, you just get your hunting clothes off, make sure you're clean and respectable, look good, knock on the door, introduce yourself, ask for permission to retrieve the deer. If they say no, then we just call the DEC, and then they go and they take care of the issue, because then the person who says no has to have a hunting license, a deer tag, archery permit, and a way to possess the animal.
Yeah.
You know,
I think to start this process, the areas that we called out back in October make all the sense in the world. I mean, they're relatively secure areas. They are on the borders of the city for the most part. We also did have a county property in there. But I think in order to address this whole problem, we should circle back to where we started and include the town of Ellicott. Because, I mean, where are our deer coming into the city from? You know, a lot of it's coming in from the town of Ellicott. So if you really want to address the issue, it should be a two-part program, to my mind. And the other thing is, I think if we get out in front of this sooner, I think we jumped on this one, was it October 1st, Eddie? And I think the council felt rushed. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in you guys' mouth, but it was like, here's the program. We want to do this. Let's start. Let's go. And
It is, yeah, it feels rushed.
it felt rushed.
The first day of the season. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, if we brought Bob in and the gentleman from the Army Corps and had some interaction maybe over the summer, you know, toward the end of the summer, when things are starting to slow down a little bit, I think that may go a long way. Jump in, Tom.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's good that we're starting this discussion now in February.
Right, right.
We've got
No, you're
time to look
absolutely
at
right.
options and talk to people. Like I said, bring in the DEC like we had a few years ago, talk to them. See what other things that might be out there on the rise. Maybe the DEC would pay for a program too. Don't know till we ask them, I guess.
Well, it's
Okay.
not hard to pay for tags. I mean, there's always going to be money from hunters, but it just depends on what kind of program, you know, we can get together and that everybody's going to agree on. If there's going to be enough hunters for it to be worth saying, okay, we're going to use the money from the tags for. So.
I mean, the DEC bill was backwards.
Let's look at the financial end. I can throw in some things. I don't know if that got discussed with everybody back in October. I made contact with Joe and Bob Sapiric's meat processing on Shady Side Road.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we have to have an established understanding with all the hunters. If this moves forward, there will be no field dressing an animal in the city of Jamestown. We have to remove it from the city to field dress it. Take it to Sapiric's, the hunter, for $10. You can hand $10 bill over to Sapiric's. They field dress it, take care of it there. If we say we want all that meat to go to St. Susan's Food Kitchen, it's all done for free. They cover the cost through the New York State Venison Coalition. If St. Susan's is filled up, they can't take any more meat, then it all goes to the Venison Coalition. So Sapiric's are paid. So if the hunter walks in and says, I want 50% of the deer, then the hunter pays for 50% of the deer. And the other 50 goes to feed the homeless. It's a win-win situation. If you want me to reach out to CJ and see if you want to participate in a Zoom meeting at some time, I can do that. It'd probably take me a long while to find him. He's not always the easiest to find because he's being filmed for TV hunts as well. So, but that's up to you guys, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too. I'd like to include him on this, and I think we do need to have a meeting with the DEC. So I spoke with the police chief, Tim Jackson, this afternoon too. And, in one of our council meetings, he was asked, do you think this is it safe? And he had some doubts or questions about it. I mean, and he said, there's the possibility, you hit a deer with an arrow, you don't always drop it right there. And
Rarely.
it could run 100 yards. I don't know. That was an issue. He worried about it on someone else's property, or going into the street, and then hitting a car, and those were his concerns. He also was worried about just kids playing out in the woods somewhere who might possibly get hit. So those were his concerns. And the one thing he did say, which kind of gave me a little bit of encouragement, was, if we look at those locations, and Jeff, you talk about the map of the city that we had, he said if we could tighten those circles maybe a little bit, try to, so that anything that got hit and would run, you can, it's not going to run into anything, and it's got 100 yards at least to run before it comes into, on a road or someone's backyard.
I feel really confident of Washington Street, that strip of city land y'all were talking about hunting on. I'm really familiar with that. I'm also really familiar with the chunk of property behind Allen Park Ice Arena and as well as Bergman. And I think that you guys didn't have a bad plan at all for letting, a certain amount of proficient archers go in there and take care of some of these deer numbers, because I think, in the end, it's about having a herd that can, an ecosystem that works together in there and not an overpopulated ecosystem. And I think those pieces of property in the city in general can only hold so much, at any given time. So I think even going into those smaller plots and thinning out those deer, you're going to see less deer moving into the suburb areas, and you're going to have less coyotes going into those areas. So, it's not so much about, I hope in my my eagerness to be able to be a part of this, I hope I don't come off like I just want to go in there and, kill deer, because that's not what it's about. I just, I want to see a well-maintained ecosystem here for everybody to be able to enjoy. So.
Yeah.
Is Dan on the meeting with us, Tom?
I believe he is. Yeah, Dan, I think you're muted.
Yeah, Bob, I'm here.
Okay.
I just can't get my camera working right now for some reason.
I
But
remember.
actually, I'm looking up on my phone, and the DEC has 2 older plans that they got booklets on. I'm trying to find a newer one, but they had almost guides, like one was done in 2007 and another one in 2008. And Tom, you had said Ithaca, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there's another one since then where it sounds like they tried to do some of the sterilization, but have actually done more bait and shoot in certain areas, which then makes it a smaller kill zone, I'm guessing. Just like yourself, Tom, I'm not a hunter either, but I grew up in Western New York. Just about everybody I know is. But it also gives you some different ways to maybe get some education out to the public as well. So if we can we get that contact at the DC, I think they've already got certain plans in place and stuff that we can definitely relate to and use, both educationally and then to implement a plan.
Dan, the plan that I was referring to, well, the main plan is management plan for white-tailed deer in New York State, 2021 to 2030. It was a draft in November of 2020. So I don't know that it's been accepted at this point, but that's where I found the link to the urban deer populations and management of that.
Yeah, what I've got is a Citizen's Guide to the Management of White-tailed Deer in Urban and Suburban New York. And that one came out in 2007. And then it looks like there was an upgrade of that to 2008. And it talks about Elmira's plan in there, and that was part of the sterilization too. But I mean, this book, from what I can see, just scrolling through my phone, is covering everything we're talking about, from reasonings why damage and to keep a healthy population, to ways of actually doing it. Venison coalitions mentioned in the article as well. So there's stuff that's outlined right here, even though it's 12 years old. I'm sure the DEC has updated it since.
They did, yeah. I've got the Deer Management in Urban and Suburban New York report to New York State Senate and Assembly, dated December 31st, 2018. So that must be the most recent. It's a report anyway. It's not a pamphlet, but.
Yep.
And we're not the first community in New York State to consider this. It's being used throughout the state in several communities, even part of the SUNY system. The University of Binghamton is using archers to control the deer herd on that campus.
I think I'd much rather see archers do it, because I mean, you just got more meat in front of people. everybody wants to eat. I don't know. It's one of the greatest proteins you can get for yourself. I think I'd rather see it go to that point and feed people who are in need than try to sterilize deer.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the sterilization one, the cost and everything that I've seen just in the last 10 minutes on here is it's not really working. The sterilization for the efforts you're going
Outrageous.
through.
Yeah.
And we need to accept the fact that there's far more deer in the city of Jamestown than what wanders across the city line from the town of Ellicott. I've got the same herd of 9 to 20 deer in our backyard on a year-round basis, and they're staying right here in Ohio Street, Palmer, Alec, that whole quadrangle here. And I can tell exactly what does which. I've got one that's been running for 3 years now with a broken leg, must have got hit by a car, leg healed in a broken situation. So she's really going on 3 legs. We can see her and her triplets. She's had triplets each year for the last 3 years.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And it's one of the things that folks that aren't really familiar with white-tailed deer don't realize, that those cute little fawns that were born in May with their white spots, they all got bred this last November, and most all of them will drop one fawn in coming May.
Yep. Yep.
I
So you
think
look
Jeff's
at 9
right.
deer now, a year from now, you're going to have 18
Yep.
I
minimum.
think Jeff's right. I think we should reach out to our neighboring municipalities. I mean, they're dealing with the same problems we are, and get them on board with some kind of plan, or at least make them aware of what they're doing. Is there anywhere, Bob, where we can get a count of what was taken during the hunting season this year? The county or the DC tracking those numbers?
Yeah, they should have those numbers available. Mayor Eddie, if I can ask you, have you got any upcoming calls planned with the DEC? They can answer that question.
We don't, but they're pretty accessible. We're happy to get that information for you guys. And
I don't know if it would come out of Albany or out of Allegheny County.
yeah, we can try to get it. Might take a little bit of time. I think most agencies are working a bit slower due to COVID.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can get from them.
Yep. Yeah, and I can work with you on that, Eddie, if you run into any problems. There's office in Buffalo and office in Allegheny with biologists in each. So hopefully we get an answer quickly. If they've tabulated it all, that's the next question.
Sure. Yeah, our contacts at the DEC have been super responsive.
Yep.
And they've been really, really great along the way, and have been proposing different options. And as you all mentioned, there's been lots of discussions on whether a sterilization program would work versus a bait and shoot versus a couple different types. And what we've heard from the DEC is that they're still working on trying to find a comprehensive deer management or deer population control mechanism that could be deployed across cities. So they're willing to work with us in any way we decide as a community that's best for our needs. And they're looking to find successful programs that they can then use in other cities.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the question is, kind of where do we go from here? What I'd like to do, or what I'm hearing, is that we need to schedule another meeting and include the DEC, maybe include someone from the town of Ellicott. I don't know. Who is the supervisor over in the town of Ellicott?
McLaughlin.
Is McLaughlin?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then the town of Bustye is the southern border of the city, so maybe Jesse Robbins.
Okay. And I can reach out to them and see if they'd want to join in this discussion, and and again, somebody from the DEC, and I think I need to do a little more homework. You guys gave me some ideas and some things to think about too.
Hey, Tom, you mind if I point on that?
Go ahead.
I think in one of the other things that I wanted to, try to help educate some of the folks who aren't educated on deer management and wildlife management is that the reason we have deer around is because of the efforts from hunters and buying tags and wildlife management. We're not out there bloodthirsty. We're managing a population of animals so we can have them around and everybody can enjoy them for future generations to come. It's not a wild deal. It's very much calculated. And yeah, I think that we can all work together and come up with a plan that makes sense for everybody, something that everybody's comfortable with. So I appreciate y'all having me on, and it's good to meet y'all. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, no, I'm glad you were here, and I think we need the other council members, especially, to be in on this and know that it isn't just some of the calls I've been getting from people they seem to think that what's going to happen. Are there going to be people running through the yards shooting deer or shooting them in a car or something? I'm like,
there's a lot less people who are going to be interested in hunting inside the city limits than I think some people think. There's going to be a lot of folks that participate, but
right.
I don't think it's going to be a crazy deal like opening day shotgun or anything. We're not talking about fire. We're talking about bow and arrow here.
Right.
And if you make deer, it's 20, 30 yards. You're not, you got to be proficient with your bow, but you can make those shots and put a deer down right away. And I think that we'll have a plan that comes together that works well. I feel confident in it.
Yeah.
And one of the things to give thought to, Tom, is that there's going to be, because I've already heard it since the article's in the paper. Well, you guys, all you want to do is kill the big bucks that are in the city. Well, solution, simple. Cannot harvest a buck till you harvest a doe.
Yeah.
Bucks don't give birth, does do. So that's the primary target, would be reducing the breeding segment, and that's not the bucks. That's the doe. So if you want to take a buck, you can, but not until you've harvested a doe.
And I think that was one of the requirements last fall of the DEC was it was only antlerless deers that could be harvested too. So
That's correct, Councilman.
You won't be buck hunting.
Mm-hmm.
It is antlerless only from the state?
That's what they said last fall, right, Eddie?
Okay,
Yeah.
I did not know that.
The deer permit management tags issued to the city would only be for antlerless deer. However, the city could, in its should it wish, authorize some use of antler deer, but it would have to be on a hunter's personal tags.
Yeah.
You did tell me that. My mistake.
I remember that.
Yep.
Okay. Well, and I like the idea of, a dozen people that are, they're designated by the city. They're not just random. We got to emphasize that this is not, the green light to go out and shoot deer anywhere in the city. And that's, as you said, I think, Matt, you mentioned earlier, it's education, and people are being aware of that. And, but, it's, sometimes this is, again, I get a lot of calls from people complaining, but then I get the call from the sweet little old lady who feeds the deer and likes to look at them. And
I like to look at them too. Trust me. I love
I know.
I was out there today behind Allen Park looking at those does. There's about 9 to a dozen does back there. I go out and talk to them all the time, looking for sheds and stuff. Love it.
Yeah. I can tell you lots of stories. Ironically, I live on Hunter Street.
There.
Yeah, and there's a paper street behind me, so there's just wooded areas, and if I don't see deer, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
And I, like I said, I'm dealt with a lot of calls, a lot of people frustrated, a lot of money, and I think it's certainly time to do something about it.
Yeah.
And
and some of that too is education about what not to plant or what you can plant that the deer won't eat. And I've learned that over the years too. I don't plant tulips anymore, for one thing.
Right.
And I've got a big rhododendron out in front of my house. They chewed the heck out of that last year.
Oh, yeah.
I trimmed off a lot of the bottom of that, so they
I know. It's funny though. I planted 2 boxwoods this past summer, and one of them is chewed down, and the other one isn't. And what I've been told is if they get hungry, they'll eat anything.
Yeah.
So and that's always going to be an issue, and we're not going to eliminate all the deer, and that's not what anybody
We're
wants.
not going to make everybody happy.
Yeah. But,
Very true.
you know, I think it's coming up with a plan that, well, we got to get a majority of the council to support it. And I think we've got to get the police chief on board, who I
Yeah.
think is open if, you know, if he's, maybe we can even ask to include him in some of these discussions. And
I think he'd be open to that.
yeah.
Is there something that maybe we can have trail cams set up during the summer to actually show how big the population is, you know, out in the
Send
back?
you them right now. I could send you trail cam videos from 2 and 3 days ago of deer in these areas we're talking about. Just flocks of does, and you know, 2-3 bucks in there still holding the antlers. Flocks of does come through there.
There's, in those pamphlets, there's also like sample questionnaires they had sent out to residents to get their feedback on the whole spectrum of the thing, to damage a property to actually allowing the shooting to take place. So I think more of that we get going, but if you can show numbers, you know, where it's warranted, maybe some questionnaire, maybe get the public a little bit more involved or at least educated enough to show them that it's really warranted. You know, somebody who's on over here on the west side, you know, maybe Clinton Street or something, doesn't see the deer that you do up in Allen Park or up at Bergen, those kind of things.
Yeah.
No, I've talked with a lot of people that are opposed to hunting as a master instructor. And I never try to win somebody over who's opposed to hunting. I just want to get them to understand that there's a reasonable reason. That was an interesting combination of words. I taught phys ed, not English. A reasonable reason. Okay. Everything in life is going to die. Us and every animal. We've got a 6-foot hole waiting for us, but by God's grace, we can have victory over that. But that's a discussion for another time. But God gave man dominion over the animals, and with that, I believe, comes stewardship, the proper care of the animals. So let me just share something you guys can meditate on, because this is one of the things I explained to the non-hunter. And understand that right now in the United States, 10% of the population hunts, 10% is vehemently opposed to hunting, 80% hasn't made up their mind yet. We want to work with the 80%.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is going to die. So if we've been given dominion over the animals and stewardship, how do animals die? Either by old age, which is very rare in nature, or disease, or predation. One animal kills another animal for food, or they get hit by a vehicle, or they starve to death, or they're killed by a hunter. So let's take me out of the equation. Take the hunter out. We don't exist. So folks, you choose, what way would you like the animal to die? Disease, starvation, predation, getting hit by a car, or you choice. It's your decision now, because you took me out of the picture. And if somebody isn't quite sure about predation, anybody who's opposed to hunting and think this is totally wrong, I'll challenge you to go to YouTube and get a video of a coyote killing a deer and watch a 6-hour video of one coyote eating a deer to death from the stomach first. And then tell me that's a better way than an arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So something to meditate on, something to think about, because you're going to get challenged, or we're going to get challenged with people who don't understand. And once they understand, when I've shared that little thing with a lot of people, they said, wow, you know, I never thought about it that way.
No,
I don't want to hunt. I'm not going to be a hunter, but now I understand why you are, and I understand why it's important that you do.
Mm-hmm.
That is our goal.
Yeah. And most folks have never been challenged by hearing it that way either.
Yeah. I really never thought about it myself that way, but you're right. Well, anything else before we wrap this up? I don't. Matt?
I agree with everything Matt was saying about safety and education. That's the utmost important. You know, if you educate the people and show the safety aspect to it, I think you'd be all right with a program. But is the prior program that you folks had worked on out there somewhere where I could look at it? I'm kind of at a disadvantage of what you guys have done thus far versus where we want to go.
I can send the original resolution and any other notes that we've had to the entire group so you guys can take a look at it. Matt, there was no specific prior program. The only thing we were looking at was for the city to authorize a set number of hunters to have limited locations, and the state was going to provide us tags for the culling of antlerless deer in specific city property locations only.
Okay.
But I will send that over, and it details just kind of what we were thinking as part of that plan.
Right.
When I reach CJ, when we actually do make a connection, he and I, whenever that is, do you want me to pass information on that off to you, Eddie, or to Tom? Or how do you want, what am I to do?
You could send it to me, that'd be fine. I'm looking at, setting a date for another meeting, and in between and, making some contacts with the DEC and doing a little further research, and, maybe having more conversations with our police chief and other members of the council. Do you think, when should we meet next? Is there, I think we've got a little bit of time, but I'm looking at, I know we have next week is a week off for the schools, and I was looking at possibly, say, March 10th, be a month from today, to revisit this, and we can, like I said, if it works better to have the DEC or other people in on this a day or two before that or after that, we can let you know. But
Yeah, I think it would be good to get the DEC involved as soon as possible.
Is, in evenings, does that work for most everyone?
This was a good time for me.
I'm retired, Tom, so anything works for me.
Yeah. It's looking better all the time.
Well, I tell you, the article that was in the paper, Post-Journal messed it up, but that's probably normal. But if you thought I was still teaching at Frewsburg, would you tell somebody down there that I haven't gotten a check for about 18 years now?
Hey, Tom, speaking of, actually, you work at Frewsburg, you teach there?
Yes.
Did you know Paul Krakowski?
Yes. Yeah.
So I know Donna and Amber real well, and Amber totaled her car earlier this year. She hit a deer, so.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, well, I know, and you hear there's more and more accidents like that, and it's, is she okay?
Oh yeah, she's fine. Cara was not. She's all right. Yeah, she wasn't.
Yeah.
Just one other thing, Tom. I'm looking at a map here that shows overabundance hotspots, and also where there's town, city, or village-run deer management or research programs. So it does show the city of Jamestown as being an overabundant deer area with no municipal program. But it looks like, to me, the town of Bustye has some kind of program. So I don't know if it's a research program or a management program, but maybe Jesse Robbins can shed some light on that.
Okay.
I wonder if that's still sitting there from when Celeron had a controlled marksman hunt at the sewage disposal plant.
Yeah. Well, that's the town of Ellicott though, too. So I don't think that's it.
I don't know. I just know that's the only other regulated hunt that I'm aware of in our county.
Yeah, this was from the 2018 report to the state Senate and Assembly. So it's possible maybe maybe the state messed up the map. Who knows?
We need to regroup.
Yeah, and that's, well, again, between now and March 10th, I'm going to contact Busti and Ellicott, maybe Village of Celeron, and see what their plans are in the DEC, and
The mayor has a contact with the DEC.
you do?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. All right.
We'll reach out. If we're looking at March 10th, Jeff and I will regroup and try to talk with the DEC on if they're able to if they're available on that.
Okay.
I'll see if I can get CJ involved. If I can find him.
That'd be great. All right. Anything else?
Same time, Tom, or that's yet to be decided?
7 works well for me. If
Okay,
that's good for everyone else. Wednesdays are
okay.
usually open nights, so
I don't
Looks like you're still in the classroom, Tom.
I am. It's been a long day. And I'm hungry, so I wouldn't be getting home. Anything else?
Give a
Well-
greeting to D for me if you would be so kind.
I will, yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys coming on tonight. And I hope we can get something accomplished.
Yes,
I feel
can.
very good.
I think we can.
Yeah. It's just
All right.
about people know why we're doing what we're doing. That's all.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, well, yeah, thanks guys. I really appreciate your time and thanks for having me again.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. Good
All
night,
right.
everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
Nice to meet the new guys.
Hey, Tom, you got a minute?
Yes.
Just wanted to give you a heads up. I was able to get Bill Ross's trees today. The guys went up and trimmed Bill's trees.